Well, what an introduction. I sincerely hope I can live up to the bill. On a personal level, to be back here at the great University of Leeds is a massive, massive thing for me, because literally my entire journey started from this very foundation of what is such a wonderful university. So to stand here in front of you and talk about what I believe are the main differences in terms of entrepreneurialism and what brands need to do, especially now so more than ever, is a real major thing for me. So, first and foremost, people stay where they belong. Now you might think to yourself, what on earth does that mean? What does belonging mean in terms of business? Now, of course, in most businesses, you're taught in business school to turn around and say, okay, well, it's just a transaction. It's this buys this, A buys B, and you just might be making a purchase for a ticket, an experience. It could be a grocery, it could be anything. But the reality is that good businesses, good brands are not just about the transaction, but it's how they make you feel. The connotations, the community, the belonging. Now, I first saw that here, ironically, at Leeds University Law Society. Somehow I was named president of the Law Society, and before you knew it, I was having to try and gain loads of sponsorship. And to do that, I had to be very much one of the community, one of the students, to the point that they believed in me to build that belonging. What I didn't realize was that was actually the start of my entrepreneurial journey, because I didn't realize at the time that generating £56,500 for a student society in 2006 was a little bit unheard of. But I soon realized something so powerful. It wasn't just about the transaction. It was about how that transaction made you feel. Very much how people stay where they belong. Now, that particular picture there is very special to me, because that was when I was running my wrestling events all around the country, all around the world. But again, it was all about creating that sense of belonging. But way before that, I was very fortunate to experience circumstances in which stuff went so far past the revenue levels or profitability or anything like that, to the point that when I created my travel businesses, which very much were centered out of this university itself, I then had different trigger points that made me realize loyalty, community, that real sense of identity meant so much more than any transaction ever could. And it's crazy to even think about it now, but literally I was creating brands in which people became so committed to the cause that literally people were getting my brands tattooed on themselves, right? I can't even begin to tell you what that was like when I saw it, and it was, at first I thought it was strange, and I was like, wow, I just don't know how to react to it. But that made me think that actually what I'd gone and created was so much more than just a transaction. It was a value that meant that the community and everything else that I'd done around it meant so much more, because that was how it made you feel. We live in a world of a new digital reality. We know that AI is something that speak about more and more, but the reality is that attention can be bought. If you've got enough money, you can run Facebook ads, you can run Google ads, you can do a whole variety of PR campaigns. But what does that actually mean in the real world? Well, in my view, belonging has to be built. And one of the more recent examples for that was when I took over my wrestling business a good few years ago. I had to know what that sense of belonging really meant. And I had to immerse myself in the culture to understand what they liked, what they didn't like, and everything else that came with that. So even though everybody thought I was absolutely crazy considering how many fans of this particular wrestling promotion there were, literally, I personally rang every single person that I had data for to try and build that sense of a connection, to build an identity so I could understand what the fans were thinking, what they were hoping for, and what they were looking for me to achieve. Now, that sense of belonging and putting yourself in the center of a community, the reality is that can't be bought. That's where you have to literally get the buy-in from, whether it's the fans, the customers, or anything else that comes in between it all. Because the reality is that when you get the belonging and everybody is singing from the same hymn sheet, the best form of marketing isn't the marketing that can be bought. It's the marketing through word of mouth from the people that believe, to the point that when they're part of that actual organization or fan base or community, is that they're so loyal that they will actually do the marketing for you. So businesses make the mistake in which they think, where's the next sale coming from? What they should be asking is, how am I going to get the people that I sell to communicate on my behalf, to be able to tell that story and that narrative more effectively? And we see some great examples of that at the moment. If you look at, for example, brands such as Red Bull or Monster, you're not necessarily buying just a drink because you're thirsty. You're buying into a narrative. You're buying into a subconsciousness that makes you feel a specific way. Businesses sometimes forget, in my view, 3 critical things: identity, connection, and meaning. So how does a brand make you feel? What is the identity of associating you personally with that brand? What is that connection? How does it feel? What is that meaning for you? Now, I've been very fortunate in the fact that since I left the great law school here at the University of Leeds, to be involved in some crazy businesses in some crazy sectors. If you'd have told me that when I first left here that I was going to end up doing travel and media and become an associate director of Tranmere Rovers Football Club and own one of the largest wrestling businesses in the world, I'd have said, really? Really? I'm supposed to be a lawyer, because that's what I was originally meant to do. But what I realized through all these different businesses, even though we're in different sectors, that the ones that achieve the most amount of success are the ones that have identity, connection, and meaning. And great examples of that, if you are a football fan, well, what is the identity? Well, the first thing is, I'm proud to wear that jersey. I'm proud to wear the colours of that particular team, because that is my identity. The connection is then with everybody in and around you, the community aspects in terms of how that makes you feel, because you're not just going to a football match, you're going there with like-minded people who are all there for one particular purpose, community, and hopefully a win. But nevertheless, you're there because of all of that and because of what it means. When you finally win a football game, even if you're losing all the time, when you finally do win, that meaning means so much more. And the same connotations for all of this became so prevalent for me in the world of professional wrestling, because, again, identity. You might have like a specific wrestler. You might have a real connection with that particular wrestler in terms of what he or she says on the microphone or who they're trying to represent. And that meaning then resonates so much more, to the point that you want to follow that hero's journey. It may well be that you're watching them lose week after week after week, but then you don't want to miss out on that particular point in time in which that person that you've been following, that person you've been cheering, all of a sudden has the opportunity and finally wins the big one, wins the championship. It's theatre at its very best. It's literally physical theatre. And that's why the WWE is now one of the largest sports entertainment companies in the world, with such a massive, huge market cap. My job, alongside other promotions, was to help build that next generation of stars. But for me to be able to commercialize that and sell tickets, sell merchandise and everything else that went alongside that, I had to give the fans a reason to identify with those talent, identify the connection, and that particular meaning. The product or the service gets them in, the feeling brings them back. Why do people buy season tickets for football clubs? They know they're not going to be watching, well, normally, they're not going to be watching their team win every single time. But that feeling of when you do win, that sense of loyalty, that commitment, the community, everything else that goes alongside that, when you do have those feelings, they are what bring you back in time and time again. And I've also seen it on the travel side. So I was very fortunate to create a number of different summer camp and cultural exchange type businesses. The transaction was simply, I'm paying for a travel product. I'm paying for an experience. But that feeling that kept me bringing people back into my organization time and time again was the fact that when we were sending people to the likes of Thailand to rebuild schools, to put English teachers when schools couldn't afford it, or to do true elephant conservation, that feeling and the way that sense of community resided amongst the groups meant that they didn't just want to do one of my programs, they wanted to do more and more and more. So that feeling very much started to bring them back. And in that particular slide, for any of you that are wrestling fans, and I appreciate probably a lot of you aren't, is that was a crazy situation in which that was the bringing together of some of the biggest legends in wrestling, and it was my first time in which I had to properly interview people live in front of hundreds of thousands of people on Fight TV and about 2,000 people in that audience. And when you're dealing with big personalities, you're trying to bring people together, you're also trying to show enough respect but get enough answers out of the people that you're interviewing to make it interesting. But of course, that was the first one we did. The convention itself went on to be a massive success, and that feeling is what's brought fans back over and over again to the point that it's now the biggest wrestling convention outside of the US. One of the things that I feel as though a lot of leaders and businesses need to look at is these particular things. It's the building of belonging, identity, ritual, visibility. For me, I'm a great believer that actions can speak louder than words ever can. But it's one thing talking the talk. It's a whole different thing walking the walk. And I feel as though at times that's where brands let themselves down in terms of the narratives that they're trying to do. Now, whether it was right or wrong, I got named Britain's best boss, which I have to say made me laugh. And in all honesty, I'm probably not Britain's best boss. I was probably Britain's hardest boss to work for because my standards were very, very high. Because I wanted to treat people how I wanted to be treated. Because that was what gave me the initial input as to how I created my businesses and brands in the first place. So if I couldn't understand why a company was doing things a certain way, I wanted to change that. And therefore, I would never ask anybody in my business to do something that I either haven't done or wouldn't be prepared to do in the future. There's a wonderful phrase in a fantastic book called To Kill a Mockingbird. And in it, it says, to truly understand somebody, you've got to slip inside their shoes, slip inside their skin. And for me, whether it's business, friendships, relationships, I've always tried to do that in terms of putting myself in the shoes of the other person in order to truly understand where they are coming from. And in business, if you can put yourself in the shoes of that potential consumer, you can then ask yourself, is that something that I would buy? Is there an opportunity for it? I look at it as IDA. Identify, describe, analyze. And if all those things marry up, then you've got a brand that actually has something of value that people are willing to buy. But what keeps people coming in time and time again is that sense of belonging. But the reality is, for me, I don't think I'm Britain's best boss. But the one thing I would take out of it is the fact that the Daily Mail said I was 2 years younger than what I really was. So on that basis, I'm quite happy to believe that you should always believe what you read in the Daily Mail. But nevertheless, these things are what businesses need to do more and more in order to be successful and achieve. So ultimately, why do people stay where they belong? It's not just a transactional value. It's something that gives a sense of loyalty, identity, community, and a sense in which I'm proud to be a part of that particular item, service, or overview that will truly make a difference to my life. That's what businesses should do. That's what I've always done. And I'm a great believer that if people follow the fact that community matters more and more, I think businesses can succeed at a far greater level than they have ever done so before. Thank you very much indeed, everybody. Really appreciate your time. Thank you.